Hi, Jeremy Crow here. In this video, I'm doing an Esoteric Insomniac's live stream, episode 5. Pretty sure it's episode 5. Tonight, we can talk about anything you guys want to talk about, but usually I have some sort of topic in mind that I'll default back to in case there's nobody asking questions or anything like that. And so tonight, I was thinking it would be cool to talk about the Necronomicon. So, just to, if anybody isn't aware, the Necronomicon is this mythical occult tomb. This book that is supposed to have dark magic in it. The word Necronomicon itself, if you break it down, it means the Book of Dead Names. So there's several different interpretations of that, but I think that the main interpretation of that is ancient forgotten deities or spiritual powers, etc., that have been forgotten or lesser known, that they've essentially are no longer worshipped by anybody or by any large groups of people. Maybe small, obscure cults maybe still worship some of these ancient deities, but they're essentially considered dead in a sense, that they're no longer worshipped by large numbers of people. But that maybe that, you know, sometimes that these are entities perhaps that were never worshipped by humans, that maybe they were worshipped by some other intelligent being that once existed, or maybe they were former powerful entities at one point that maybe had physical form and now are not physical. There's a lot of different interpretations, like I said, but I think that the most common interpretation of the meaning of the Book of Dead Names is ancient deities that are no longer worshipped, and that essentially they represent a vast reservoir of power that can be tapped into by an individual or a small cult of individuals that maybe can access what was once a mighty entity, So this book, the Necronomicon, has showed up in a lot of fiction, most notably by H.P. Lovecraft. Howard, I'm not sure what the P stands for, actually, to be honest. Lovecraft. So H.P. Lovecraft, he wrote a lot of horror books and short stories especially, and in some of them there is this mythical Necronomicon that he talks about in the book, in the stories. And several of these stories include this as a plot device, right? Now, H.P. Lovecraft himself claimed that it was just something he made up, but there are other people who say that it's a real thing. There are actual versions of the Necronomicon available that you can purchase that are in print. There is one in particular that is ubiquitous. Basically, it's in like every single bookstore, and it's in like a paperback format, and it is published by Avon Books, I think, and it's supposedly translated and edited by Simon. This it's a pseudonym, right? But who is actually Simon? Well, we know that definitely Peter Levenda is part of that. He claims that Simon is not just one individual, that it's a group of people, a small group of individuals, and that he is admitted that he is one of them. Although it's supposed to be Simon reading, I can't remember what it was, but it was Simon reading some kind of notes related to the Necronomicon. I can't remember exactly what it was, but you hear the voice, and it's supposed to be Simon, and you can, if you recognize the voice, it's Peter Levenda's voice. So in that sense, he's kind of admitting that he's Simon, but he never denied that he was part of that, but he claims that it's not just one individual. So it's hard to say, is Simon just Peter Levenda? And he's trying to say, no, it's not just me, it's a small group of people. Or is it actually a small group of people? I'm not sure. Oh, looks like I dropped out there for a second. I guess my signal isn't that strong. Actually, I almost didn't do this because my signal wasn't that great. Oh, I'm on mobile data right now instead of the Wi-Fi. So I guess the Wi-Fi connection kicked out. Oh, there, it's back again. And it looks like I'm having the same problem. Looks like I'm having the Wi-Fi kicking out and going into mobile data. A couple times has happened now. So if it keeps up, I might have to end this prematurely, but let's see what happens. Hopefully I'm able to maintain a connection that's good enough to keep up this live stream. Oliver, we got a first comment. Oliver says, while I'm a big Lovecraft fan and I really like the Cthulhu mythos, I still feel like Lovecraft's approach to the deities is very phobic. Yeah, no, I agree. I feel like, he kind of taps in, John H just says I've just walked into work. LOL. So you just started your work and you decided to watch my video while you're at work, I guess. I don't know. Anyways, it's interesting the approach that Lovecraft has to the deities and the entities. They're kind of watch me at work if you feel like it. If you're not too busy, if it's not taking away from your work. I often will watch videos while I'm working as well. I'll just have it in the corner of my screen while I'm doing other stuff. Usually it's something that I don't need to watch, but just something that I can listen to and enjoy, like that, like a podcast or some kind of informational video. But the approach that I think that Lovecraft has towards the entities, whether they're aliens or some sort of ancient creature or the spirit of some sort of ancient creature or some actual deity itself, I think he's trying to tap into that dread, that sense of dread that you get when encountering something so unfamiliar, so otherworldly, that it's hard to process. I think that's what he's trying to tap into, is that fear, that dread. And I think that a lot of times he's taking a normal, might as well say normal individual, and throwing them into this extreme situation and seeing how their mind breaks down in that context. But you also see some of the characters in his stories that are seasoned occultists, and they don't quite break down as easily. Some of them actually seem to thrive from it in a sense, and have developed organizations devoted to interfacing with these entities. So you do see that kind of dichotomy there, but I think that he's really trying to tap into that kind of that dread, you know. So that fear of the unknown, exactly, was a major theme. Oliver says there, backing me up on that. Yeah. Oh, and hi from Athens. Like, he treats the ancient entities as those malevolent forces that only intend to destroy, and that's really Christian. Okay, yeah, I can see what you're saying for that. Yeah, he definitely tends to focus on the more destructive kind of entities that you could possibly encounter, right? And that's understandable because he was a horror fiction author, right? So of course he's going to focus on the scary stuff, especially. But this book that I was talking about, that you can find almost anywhere, that Avon Books paperback of the Necronomicon. It seems kind of hilarious that you can just get a paperback copy of the Necronomicon at like practically any bookstore, or even like airports. You know, like, it's ridiculous how ubiquitous this book is. But and it's like, especially considering what it purports to be, you know, like. But what's interesting about that one is that they focus a lot on the ancient Mesopotamian pantheon of gods, like the Sumerian and Babylonian. Oh, sorry, if there was a gap there, because again, I'm doing it's switching back and forth between the Wi-Fi and the mobile data. Sorry about that if it's causing any disruption. But I was saying, the deities in that Simon edition of the Necronomicon tend to be Mesopotamian. In particular Babylonian, which was the inheritor of the Sumerian culture. But they also introduced their own innovations and elaborations. So you have Marduk end up kind of coming up as the king of gods, in a sense, in the Babylonian, whereas he was more minor figure in the Sumerian. But you do see that reflected in the Simon Necronomicon. Now, I didn't take the Necronomicon very seriously for many years. I had my own copy of it, sitting on my bookshelf for a long time, just for the novelty of it, really, is why I had it. But eventually I decided, you know what, I'm going to actually read this thing and see what it's all about. And I was so surprised. I had very low expectations, very low expectations for it. So that might have something to do with it. But I was pleasantly surprised. You know, there was definitely the approach, like Oliver was saying, that the Lovecraft's approach is kind of problematic for somebody who actually intends to make this into a workable system, or to actually utilize it in their practice. And I find that does come through in the Simon Necronomicon to some extent, where they say, beware solar methods that are very common in esoteric tradition will not banish these entities properly, and all kinds of warnings like that. And they kind of still portray these entities as kind of wishing the destruction of humanity, and they still have that kind of baggage, that Lovecraftian baggage there that he had from, you know, that tint, you could say, that bent that he had towards the dread, right? The whole horror aspect to it. You see that in there. And I do feel like it's almost like a right-hand path approach to this kind of work. Whereas, you know, the nature of the Necronomicon itself seems to lend itself more towards a left-hand path approach, but the book that's common kind of takes it from a right-hand path approach, which really doesn't make much sense to me. Although it's very traditional to come from a right-hand path approach when doing these things, like you have the Book of the Sacred Magic of Abramelin the Mage. That classic grimoire, that's a very right-hand path approach to summoning demons, in a sense, right? And same with the Goetia, the Ars Goetia. That is a very right-hand path approach to something that you would think would be more appealing to left-hand path practitioner, you know, interacting with demonic entities, you know. So, you know, it's not that surprising that the Simon Necronomicon would take that kind of approach, but I did find it a little bit disappointing, that aspect. But the other thing too is that when I read it, I was like, oh man, I've been kind of working on something along very similar lines as this, except taking a different approach, taking a more left-hand path approach. And I kind of thought to myself, you know what? I think I can do it better. I think I can take my personal experience and do a left-hand path version of this and kind of do it better. In a sense, not exactly a left-hand path version of it, but I felt like I could kind of cover a lot of the same material, or a lot of the same kind of similar material at least, but from a left-hand path perspective. And I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna go ahead and do it anyways. And that's kind of what the Ziggurat of Enki project that I have is. That's kind of like almost like my own version of the Simon Necronomicon. Not really, but once I read the Simon Necronomicon, I was like, okay, you know what? I really enjoy this, and I think that it could be complementary to the Ziggurat of Enki type stuff that I'm developing. So I took that in mind when I was writing some of that material that's already out there, and the notes that I have and the content that I've written that I haven't published on that, I've taken into account the Simon Necronomicon, so that if an individual was going to do the Ziggurat of Enki work, that they could also do the Simon Necronomicon work, and they would be complementary to one another, that they would be compatible. So I decided, you know what, I'm just gonna harness this existing content in a way and make my Ziggurat of Enki material compatible with that. You know, it didn't take much. You know, it was just a couple small considerations that I took when writing that content. So you'll see more Ziggurat of Enki material come out for sure, because I have a lot that I've written already that it hasn't come out, and I have a lot in my head, you know, that I need to just get out. But I kind of wanted it to be compatible with that Simon Necronomicon, because I was really impressed with how they did things. Although, like I said, I do have some disagreements with that book, but I feel like in a large part, a lot of it I think is really cool, and I appreciate that it exists. And you know, there's a lot of people that come out and they say, oh, it's fake, whatever. Who cares? You know, who cares? Like, everything is fake in that sense. Like, what book wasn't written by some, you know, dude or some chick, you know, that, you know, in that sense it's fake. You know, it's somebody came up with it, right? But if it's effective, that's what matters to me. If it's evocative, if it can inspire you, if you can actually do esoteric workings like rituals and things like that are based off of it, and they're effective, well, then it's not fake anymore. So Oliver has Another comment here, kinda irrelevant, but I always wanted to ask about altar setups and magical tools, mainly which ones are used in the Luciferian practice. Well, you know what? There's no codified, you know, doctrine. There's no codified Luciferian doctrine out there. You know, there are people that have put out their own opinions on things and what they feel to be the fundamentals of Luciferianism, but it's such a free thing. You know, there's no authority figure that has any kind of what's the word, monopoly that on Luciferianism. Like, a lot of the people that were early influencers, including myself, you know, Michael Ford obviously comes to mind, just kind of came up, and a lot of independent people that you've never heard of came up with Luciferianism on their own based off of different things that inspired them, like different world mythologies, ancient and modern, like the story of Prometheus. You know, that's a huge influence on pretty much every self-styled Luciferian. And Enki from the, you know, Mesopotamian pantheons. And the serpent in Eden. You know, I talk about these three in particular all the time. And you know, I feel like material that has worked for an individual gets incorporated into a Luciferian system for that individual. I feel like for a lot of people, they did invent the wheel all at the same time. You know, like when the wheel was invented, you know, when modern Luciferianism was invented, I feel like a lot of people came up with it all at the same time, and they came up with it from their own experience and from the various different world mythologies that inspired them. Gnosticism is a huge element. Sabbatic witchcraft has been a massive influence. Ritual magic and the Golden Dawn, Wicca and the modern neo-pagan movement has been a huge influence. So it all depends on what style of working you're going to do. Not all Luciferians even have an altar or magical tools that they utilize. You know, a lot of people just do more, you know, I feel like ritual work is kind of like indirect occult work. You're kind of programming yourself in a sense, and then that has a kind of a secondary effect. Whereas there's more direct work that you could do, like lucid dreaming, astral projection, mental discipline, such as meditation, contemplation, concentration. Luciferian. It's all very personalized. Oliver says, I don't know, I'm a baby Luciferian who's trying to build his altar for his own cherry-picked pantheon and gather his tools, and so far I've read so many different things and I'm confused. Yeah, well, that's the thing. You gotta, it's not just gonna be handed to you. You know, I'm sure you could find examples of people will say, for a Luciferian altar, you need this, you need this, and you need this, and you need to arrange them in a certain placement on your altar and face it in this particular direction. You know, I'm sure you could find that, but that's just one individual's perspective. You know, you have to come up with it yourself. That's the thing about Luciferianism, is that you're not just going to get handed stuff on a platter and then you just follow it like a recipe book. You can find that, but that's just one person's opinion. You know, really it's about finding your own way in it, you know, finding that copper thread that bronze thread that runs through the Western esoteric tradition. I call it that because copper and bronze is the metal associated with Venus, and Venus is the morning star, which is Lucifer. But yeah, there's this. I feel like this kind of hidden thread underneath, and you can look up things like what is it? There's a Grail Myth. Trying to remember the name of the. Wow. Okay, I just got another glitch. But there's a Grail Myth. I'm blanking right now. It's like almost 3 in the morning where I am, but I'm sure you can look it up. There's a Grail Myth that involves the idea that the Grail, the Holy Grail, is actually a stone, a precious stone, a gemstone, particularly an emerald, that fell from Lucifer's crown during the battle with Saint Michael the Archangel during the rebellion, the rebellion in heaven, as one of those folkloric kind of stories. And that's interesting. And some people say it's a stone, some people say it's a plate, and some people say it's a cup fashioned out of a stone. Some people say it's a cup that has nothing to do with Lucifer or stone, and that's completely separate. But if that's one of the things that inspires you, then maybe you're going to want to have some kind of emerald stone, or maybe a vessel that you can drink out of, made out of emerald, or embedded with emeralds, something like that. That might be something you might want to add to your altar. Like, be inspired. Come up with something that is meaningful to you in your personal practice as a Luciferian, as a developing Luciferian. You can change it later. Just try some stuff out and see how it affects you. See if it enhances your work or distracts from it, or find if you actually use it or not. One thing that I put on my altar when I use an altar for, Luciferian specific work, I like to have, I have this little glass figurine of a rooster. That's one of the elements that's on my altar pretty much any time that I have, any kind of working that I like to do that that isn't going to conflict with that symbolism, at least, which is most of the work that I do is going to be compatible with that, right? So I usually, if I do any kind of work with an altar, unless it's a very specific type of altar, like if I have a death altar, then I don't put it on there because it's not relevant. But if I have a lot of the work that I do that isn't very specific like that, where it's a bit more generic, where I'm going to have some things that I feel like bring me just power in general or inspiration, I have that little figurine of a rooster. Now, if you're not aware, rooster, the symbolism of a rooster is significant because the rooster is famous for, it's kind of iconic for being the herald of the day, the herald of the dawn, the bringer of light, in a sense, right? Because it calls for, oh, sorry, there's another glitch. I'm gonna probably have to cut short, but when the sun rises, the roosters start crowing, and they're kind of announcing the rise of the sun, and that symbolically is like the bringer of light, or the light bearer. Literally, Lucifer means light bearer, or bringer of light, bearer, or bringer of light. And it's got a very similar symbolic meaning as the morning star, the last bright object in the sky before the sun rises, kind of announces the coming of the day, the coming of the day, the coming of the light, the bringing of the light. It's kind of bringing it, right? And heralding it, calling it forth. And so the rooster to me represents Lucifer, and that bringing of the light, that calling forth. And light itself has been a symbol of knowledge and awareness since time immemorial. Like, it's, I think, probably before humans were even verbal, we thought of light as knowledge and darkness as ignorance. Light being that which we are aware of, and darkness being that which we are unaware of. The great mystery, right, in that sense. But light being awareness and knowledge, and the coming of that, the illumination, the bringing of illumination, or the inducing of such. It's a very potent symbol to me, so I like to have that on my altar. Hopefully that helps. So Oliver also says here, also lucid dreaming would be great, but I don't even have regular dreams or sleep most of the time. And it's not that I don't remember my dreams. Your boy just has had dream sleep since forever. Okay, well, there's things you can do to increase your dream recall, and that's the first step to lucid dreaming. And I've got videos on that. So there's a bunch of different methods to increase dream recall. Maybe I'll do a dedicated video to just increasing dream recall. And I'm not sure if I've done one before, but I think I could probably do another one that just really focuses, really drills down on that. I don't have time to do it now, and especially with my connection kind of screwing up. We also have Stuart Midton. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Says, can I ask you, I'm not very well schooled with this, but is Lucifer the antithesis of the Gnostic God? No. It is, well, depends on what you mean by the Gnostic God. Do you mean the demiurge? There's a lot of different interpretations, right? So, and some people believe that Lucifer is the Gnostic God. Some people say that the demiurge is the false god in Gnosticism and not the real God. Some people say that the demiurge is the false god, but the true Most High God is different, and that Lucifer is like an agent of that Most High God. So there's, many different interpretations of the Gnostic myth, and it's hard to say, like, what, whether you feel like Lucifer is the antithesis of it, or if it is it, depends. Like, in Gnosticism, usually people think of multiple gods, that there being a demiurge, which is like a false god, but it is the creator of this material plane, of this physical universe, or at least of the earth itself. So yeah, it's kind of a complicated question to say if Lucifer, the connection of Lucifer to the Gnostic God. In one sense, Lucifer is the Gnostic God. In another sense, he's a rebel fighting against the Gnostic God. So it all depends on your perspective, I suppose. And okay, you're interested in dream yoga, etc. Yeah, I have a lot of videos on my channel here that teach lucid dreaming, dream yoga, astral projection, and that all those related things, the out-of-body experience. Mostly I use the term lucid dreaming to describe that phenomenon. And so if you look up on my channel and you look up Lucid Dreaming, you'll find a bunch of videos. And I believe I've got a playlist set up that has collected all the different videos that I've done on Lucid Dreaming. So you might want to check that out, that playlist, if you're interested in learning more about that. It's my main thing, to be honest. It's a practice that I feel like has had the biggest impact on my own personal development. It's completely changed my worldview, and I feel like it's probably one of the most potent. Yeah, I would, highly recommend watching Life, and that includes improving your dream recall. So you can get to the point where you're having a dream here and there that you're remembering. So that's the first step. How did I first start lucid dreaming? Is a question that was asked there. Well, I was a very little kid, and I had a problem with nightmares. I would dream, don't let them push you around, and it was like, what? You can do that? And it was just kind of like this aha moment. It just kind of was like, whoa, I didn't even realize you could do that. And then I had a nightmare not long after that kind of epiphany, and I realized it was a dream, and then I was able to do something about it, and that was my first lucid dream. And then I've had them ever since, not every night, but periodically on a random as a random event, but also it'll happen way more frequently when I'm doing the regular practices, like keeping a dream journal, religiously keeping it, at least some kind of point form or doodle or something, some kind of drawing or something to record something that happened in my dream. If I'm doing that regularly, then I'm having a lot more lucid dreams, that's for sure. And a lot, making a habit out of state testing to see whether you're in a dream or whether you're having a waking experience or not. What is a dream state is another question. I don't have much time, like I said, especially with my connection bad, but I'll try and quickly field this question. The dream state is the same thing as the waking state. It is your mind taking a set of data, an input of data, taking a group of data as an input and compiling it into a fully immersive experience that you have, that's presented to your conscious mind. When you are having a waking experience, that data set that your mind is compiling into a fully immersive experience, presented to your consciousness, that data set it's using is mostly coming from sense organs. So your body collects data from your senses, from the nerve endings in your hands and your skin, from the optic, from the rods and cones in your eye, through the optic nerve, the vibrations and pressure on your eardrum, traveling through the nerves, the olfactory and gustatory senses, all that. It takes all that sensory information that it's gathered from the sense organs, the physical sense organs, and it compiles that into a fully immersive experience and presents it to your conscious mind. That's what a waking state is. You're having a virtual reality experience, which is based off of data collected from your sense organs. Now, when you're dreaming, that same process is happening, except for it's taking a different data set as its main input. So something that's other than your physical sense organ data, something else. And, I know a lot of it comes from your memory, because we know that dreams generally are heavily themed after what you experienced during the day. So, memory is definitely one of those sources of data that the brain is using, or the mind is using, to compile that experience for you. So it's creating a way to interact with that data set through, like I said, a fully immersive experience that's presented to your conscious mind. So it's the same thing as when you're awake. The dream state and the waking state are both the same thing. It's just a different set of data that is compiling into experience for your conscious to be presented with. Hopefully that helps. Wow, that is visionary, man. I like that you use the word data. Have you had an out-of-body experience? Oh yeah, tons of times. I've had tons of out-of-body experiences. Christine says, hello from the Blue Mountains. Hello, Christine. Thank you for popping in. I'm always happy to see you here. Says, I have had dreams that included smells of electricity. That is very cool. That is very cool. I've had experiences where I saw something that was a color that I've never seen in waking reality. I've never had a waking experience of that color, and I can't even describe it. It was like almost like two colors at once, and so yeah, you can have some really novel experiences in dreams that you wouldn't be able to have in a waking experience. It's a different kind of different thing. Yeah, it runs by there's different rules governing it, but like I said, it is still the same thing, where you're taking a data set and you're experiencing it as a fully immersive reality. I like to just use the word experience because it doesn't imply objectivity. Sejur says, so basically there are different streams of data, memory and direct sense impressions, but they also your thoughts about events. Very nice explanation. Never had one, but I felt close to one time. Another time I lost my body for a second while high. That was a no-body experience. Christine says, I've had dreams of feeling a sense of a UFO in the area and woke up half out of bed getting up to look at the window to look for it. You know what? That's interesting you mentioned, because one of the most common things that I experience in dreams are UFOs, or unidentified flying objects, unidentified aerial phenomena, as a lot of people use the term now. But yeah, weird things in the sky that are out of place or unexplained, or even outright alien ships. Like sometimes I'll see like Saturn as bigger than the sun in the sky, or other planets or moons in the sky that aren't normally there. Multiple moons. Sometimes I'll see like crazy fireworks in the sky. I'll see alien craft flying around. Various different things like that are very common for me to experience in a dream. So I've trained myself to do a state test, to ask myself, am I in a dream state right now, or am I having a waking experience right now? And I'll do certain tests to figure out which state I'm in at the time. If I see something crazy in the sky, that I've trained myself, because that's one of those triggers that I've figured out that I have very common dreams of. So that's something that I'll do. And find that interesting you had that experience, Christine. Oliver says, Robert Bruce's work on Kundalini have helped, but since I moved to my current place, it's been impossible for me to do any meditation for some reason. It's been a year and I don't know what's the issue. Persistence, discipline. I think it's a discipline issue, probably. But not knowing anything more than what you just said, just try doing just 3 minutes. 3 minutes a day. That's it. I'm sure you can find 3 minutes to sit down and meditate for 3 minutes in a day. And I find that if you can commit to that, then you'll probably end up doing more than that. But be satisfied with yourself if you can do just 3 minutes a day. And I think that'll help you get through that rut. Sejur says, I would love to be in your mind for a day, but I'm working on it. Do you have an exercise program? Sadhana, thanks, Jeremy. Not really. I mean, I do different exercises. I don't really have a set, a standard set that I follow at the moment, at least. But with that being said, I'm really happy with how engaged you guys were today, really interacting with me on this stuff and asking questions. I love that, and I love the community that we've been developing here on this channel, especially with these live streams. I am gonna do some more pre-recorded videos where I tackle a specific topic with some prepared points that I want to cover and I'll discuss. I'm sorry to hear that, about your father passing. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. That sucks. But yeah, definitely I would look into some of the things. I have a video on how to begin necromancy. It's actually probably my most popular video right now for a while. And that would be something that I would definitely encourage you to look at, and maybe that could help you with dealing with his passing. But like I said, I'm happy that you guys have been so engaged, and the community that we've been developing here on this channel, it's really inspiring to me. And I learn from you guys as well. It's not just one way. I really appreciate all of you, and until next time, everyone, stay lucid. All right.